One of the great attractions of Norfolk Island is that while in many ways it is so familiarly British, in other ways it is uniquely different. Everyone speaks English, though the native language is a mixture of Old West Country English and Tahitian. The pace of life all over the island is so relaxed that within a few hours of landing, you sense that an entirely different culture is at work here. In fact, few would argue that Norfolk Island is very much a world apart, a world which has its own government, laws, stamps, beer, traditions and a unique culture. Norfolk Island is a rich volcanic island with sheer cliffs rising out of the Pacific Ocean. The mild subtropical climate, beautiful beaches, friendly people and intriguing history make it an ideal place to get away from it all. Norfolk, the site of one of the earliest European settlements in the southwest Pacific and one of the most treacherous places of secondary punishment for 19th century British convicts. Today, Norfolk Island is home to a community descended from participants in the most famous naval mutiny in modern history.
Bounty under my command will be a happy ship.
Hello and welcome to Norfolk Island. My name is Lyle Snell and I'm a fifth generation Norfolk Islander. My mother was a Quintal, my grandmother was an Adams and my great-grandmother was a McCoy, born on Pitcairn Island, a direct descendant of the mutineers of the Bounty. We're standing at Queen Elizabeth Lookout, which was opened by Her Majesty in 1974 when the royal family visited the island to commemorate the 200th anniversary of the discovery of this island by Captain Cook on his second voyage around the world. He was travelling from New Caledonia to New Zealand when he discovered the island on the 10th of October 1774. And he named this island Norfolk Isle, after the 9th Duchess of Norfolk of the noble family of Howard. And he had hoped to tell her of this place that he had named in her honour on his return to England, but unfortunately she passed away before he could return. But he did write very glowing reports about the island to the British Admiralty. He thought that the Norfolk Island pine would make good masts and spars for the Royal Navy ships, and he thought that the flax growing around the coastline would make good cloth and cordage. Regrettably, in both cases he was wrong, but nevertheless the British wanted to colonise the island to save those assets for Great Britain. And only 40 days after the arrival of the British into Australia, they came out here and colonised Norfolk Island with the first settlement on the 6th of March 1788.
As we travel to Point Hunter, we would like to show you copies of early photographs courtesy Max Hobbins and the Norfolk Island Lions Club photo collection.
We are now at Point Hunter on the eastern coastline at Kingston, and Point Hunter was named after Captain John Hunter, who was in charge of the ill-fated Sirius, the flagship of the First Fleet, which came out to Australia and here to Norfolk Island, where it was wrecked on the reefs on the 19th of March 1790. Many parts of New South Wales are named after Captain John Hunter and the Hunter family, but this, we believe, is the first place, Point Hunter, Norfolk Island. Out behind me is the islands of Nepean and Phillip. Now Nepean Island, the closer of the two, was named after Evan Nepean, who was assistant to the Admiralty in the Colonial Home Office in London. Phillip Island was named after Governor Phillip, and as you can see it's partially denuded of vegetation because of the release of goats, pigs and rabbits onto that island during the first and second settlement. Now the goats and pigs died out through lack of food and water, but the rabbits thrived, and it's only in the past 13 years or so that we've been able to eradicate the rabbits from Phillip Island. The damage has been done. There is a major regreening program underway on Phillip Island, and as you can imagine and appreciate, we were very lucky that the British authorities of the day did not release rabbits onto Norfolk Island. Now in front of me is the beautiful bay of Emily Bay. It was originally called Turtle Bay by King. When he arrived here, there were many nesting turtles in the sand, and the bay itself stretched much further into the island. It went up to where the golf course is now located and connected to what is now known as Cemetery Bay. The bay was changed in name to Emily Bay in honour of the wife of Commandant Morissette, who was commandant here in the 1830s. This whole area is also known as Sydney Bay. The first township on Norfolk Island was called Sydney Town, and it became confusing to have a Sydney Town Australia and a Sydney Town Norfolk Island. And we believe that the first township in Australia should have been called Albion and not Sydney. So they changed the name of Sydney Town, Norfolk Island to Kingstown in honour of the first governor, Governor King, and now it's been abbreviated to Kingston. Out to my left is the area of Slaughter Bay. Now after much research, we've been having great difficulty in finding exactly why Slaughter Bay received its name. There are many theories, some regarding the slaughter of whales, some because of the ill treatment of convicts during the first and second settlement, and others believe that Slaughter Bay was named by some of the first settlers who arrived here and stayed after 1856, and named Slaughter Bay after the same principle as the Cotswolds in England, which has what is known as an upper slaughter and lower slaughter, which are pools created by the flooding of the river that runs through the Cotswolds. And this bay area here is a bay of rock pools. Slaughter means slow running water, pools, marsh and so on. And the whole area adequately fits that description of slaughter. Ladies and gentlemen, we're just about to leave this historic and beautiful part of Norfolk Island at Kingston. But before we go, I'd like to show you a little bit about this area, particularly one that's not easily accessible, are the wheat silos. And there are 6 visible wheat silos here. I'm standing on one of them, and they were built to store the grain which was grown in Watermill Valley and other parts of the island. These silos were constructed during the second penal settlement, for which most of the buildings remaining in Kingston are left over from. Very few buildings of the first settlement remain, because the British authorities didn't want to leave any buildings behind that could be used by foreign visitors and any escaped convicts. The commissariat store behind me was constructed in 1835. Next to it we have the new military barracks, which was constructed after 1836, and next to it again is the officers' quarters. And further along Quality Row you have some of the magnificent buildings of the late Georgian, early Victorian architecture. The Kingston buildings here at Norfolk Island are classified as having been one of the finest collections of late Georgian, early Victorian architecture anywhere in the world, in any one small village. And they were looked after by the third settlers of the island, the direct descendants of the Bounty mutineers, the Pitcairn Islanders, who arrived here in 1856 on the 8th of June. We commemorate this day with a reenactment of the landing of the Pitcairn Islanders at Kingston, followed by a parade to the cenotaph to show respect for those that have contributed to armed conflicts and then onto the cemetery where wreaths are laid and traditional hymns are sung. We continue to Government House and then on to the famous Bounty Family Picnic. Several minutes ago, of course, we drove into the national park, and you may have noticed on the signboard the words in the island language, "Yoli come look on," which means principally you all come and have a look. There are over 100 different species of plants. For a small landmass like Norfolk Island, that's quite unusual. The number of indigenous plants number around 47. The bird life throughout this park area too is also interesting. There are 32 species of bird life on the island. Most of them, though, are introduced and of subspecies. There are 3 birds which are quite rare. The most well-known is the Norfolk Island green parrot, which has responded well to a captive breeding program that's been going on now for about the last 10 years. And the parrot has been released by the authorities back into the wild, hopefully to breed naturally. The bird that's becoming the most endangered on the island is the Norfolk Island boobook owl, for which there is apparently only one left. The authorities didn't realize the demise of the bird until it was too late to save it from extinction, but they've done the next best thing. They've brought in 2 birds of a similar species from New Zealand, of the moorpork owl family, and apparently there are now 9 chicks as progeny of that mating program. So some of the strain of the bird will remain. And this forest area here in the national park is the ideal breeding grounds for those birds. Now the third bird, which is endemic to Norfolk Island, is a long-billed silver-eye, which is very rare. We have the common silver-eye, which in the island term we call grinnell, but there is a native species to Norfolk Island. Throughout this area here you'll see some of the plant life of Norfolk, the tea tree, which is similar to the Didinia family here in front of us, and of course we have our own type of palm, the nihau palm as we call it. In New Zealand there's a very similar species called the nikau. Now the nihau palm is not commercially grown like the Lord Howe Island Kentia or the Howie Fosteriana. This palm is slower growing, it's much larger, and it doesn't make an attractive indoor decorative plant like the Kentia from Lord Howe Island. Now we're on the top of Mount Pitt, which is the highest elevated point of the island that we can drive to, 316 metres in height. Mount Bates is reputed to be 318 metres in height, which is about 1,047 feet. Now Norfolk Island is very small. It's only 5 miles long by 3 miles wide, or 9 by 5 kilometres approximately, and comprises about 8,555 acres, of which this park area we're in now is 850 acres in size. And it's been fenced from the wandering cattle for about the last 25 years or so, and therefore it's allowed the indigenous and native plants of the island to grow undisturbed by the cattle. Now this park area is managed by the Australian National Parks and Wildlife. Out to my right is the areas of Anson Bay and Duncan Bay. You can see some of the forestry, there are approximately 150 acres of forest on the island. There is some of the grazing fields, the agricultural fields and residential. Very little commercial activity is done out at Anson Bay, Duncan Bay. There are a few accommodation places. There is the cable station, the gun club, the new archery club starting up, and the cottage pottery. But generally this area of Anson Bay, Duncan Bay is mainly used for forestry, residential agricultural and grazing. Behind me are the areas of Cascade, Steele's Point, Ball Bay, then you have Kingston, and then going round further to Headstone, Rocky Point, and then out to Anson Bay. The airport consists of about 200 hectares of land, and it's taken up some of the beautiful areas prior to 1942, in particular the Norfolk Island Pine Avenue, which was destroyed at that time, and of course some of the historic buildings of the Longridge settlement were also destroyed. The area of burnt pine, which is the main commercial area of the island, is also very prominent down here on the flat lands. The volcano which created the island created these two high peaks of Mount Pitt and Mount Bates. There were apparently three volcanoes that first created Norfolk Island. One was out in the Ball Bay area. Ball Bay is believed to have been the first of the volcanoes, but the larger one which created the island was situated down here on my right in this valley, creating these two high peaks. The lava flowed towards the southeast, towards the Steele's Point area. Then we had another major lava flow which created the Anson Bay, Duncombe Bay area. We'll leave this area now and go to another part of the island, particularly out to the Anson Bay area. Have a look at some of the beautiful coastal scenery. Norfolk Island is renowned for its scenic beauty, particularly its coastal scenery. I'm standing on the western coastline overlooking Anson Bay. To my left are some of the beautiful areas of Puppy's Point and to Jacob's Rock, further inland of course to Anson Bay. And this bay was named after Lord Anson, who was famous for his victories against the Spanish, and this bay was where King first landed in 1788 on the 29th of February. But he couldn't establish the settlement here because of the high cliffs. He had to wait until the 6th of March before he could land at Kingston. And this bay is also where the cables come in from Takapuna in Auckland, New Zealand, also from Bondi, New South Wales. The cables come under the ocean, into the bay, then up into the cable station behind us. The cable then goes out from here to Suva in Fiji, then on to Honolulu and Vancouver, giving Norfolk Island worldwide communications by cable. Now the cable station has been part of Norfolk Island's history since 1902, when the first trans-Tasman cable link was laid between Australia and New Zealand, came via Norfolk Island. So really, Norfolk Island has had international cables since that time. And the bay is used mainly by the young folk of the island because you have to walk down to it and walk back. There is a good walking trail down, but of course you can't drive your vehicle down to the bottom of Anson Bay. But it's very popular. It's a place where a lot of boogie boarding is done, body surfing, not so much general surfing because the waves apparently aren't the right type. They also go down there sunbathing, fishing, swimming, and it's a great place to spend the day down at Anson Bay. provided a very important part in Norfolk Island's early history.
The mission was first established in Auckland, New Zealand by George Augustus Selwyn. They transferred here from Auckland in 1866, and the responsibility rested with a man called John Coleridge Patterson. Now, Patterson was very enthusiastic about his role in the Melanesian mission, and he contributed a great deal of his own finances to build some of the dormitories. They had staff quarters like Bishop's Court across the road. They had their own hospital. They had a printing press for the translation of the Bible into many different dialects for use within the Pacific Islands, and they had fields used for agriculture and so on. And this was a self-sufficient college. It was quite magnificent for its time. John Coleridge Patterson's other duties was the recruitment of students. Unfortunately for him, he was killed off an island called Nukapu in the Santa Cruz groups in 1871, and his death was a very tragic blow to the Melanesian mission and to religion worldwide. There was a committee formed in Auckland, New Zealand, which established the need to build a memorial in his memory.
And this chapel is the result, which was constructed in 1875. It took 5 years to build and was consecrated on the 7th of December 1880. The stone for its construction was quarried from the western end of Emily Bay and brought overland by bullock dray. The timbers are a mixture of Norfolk Island pine and New Zealand kauri. The nave, which is the ceiling, is mainly of Norfolk Island pine. It has been constructed very much like the hull of an upturned ship, commonly referred to as the Ship of Faith. The nave runs into what is known as a chancel, and the chancel up the front holds 5 stained glass windows, which are the works of Edward Burne-Jones. The 5 windows there depict the 4 disciples, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, with the Lord in the centre, and they have been set in white stone from Oamaru in the South Island of New Zealand. Below the centre figure of the Lord, we have what is known as a reredos, made from English oak, but inlaid within it is mosaic tile, some sheathed in gold. It was carved by the Solomon Island students under the guidance of Mr. Gibbs. Also inlaid within the reredos is bamboo, shaped like the fronds of a palm leaf. And a palm leaf is significant because one knotted 5 times was laid across the body of Patterson on the island of Nukapu to signify that the islanders had killed Patterson for the lives of 5 youths who had been previously kidnapped by slave traders under the guise of the Melanesian mission, and Patterson paid with his life. The motive of the reredos is the vine of life, which is the grapevine. In front of it is the altar, and down on the first landing is Bishop Patterson's prayer desk and chair, made from sandalwood, one of the finest and rarest timbers of the Pacific. In the right-hand alcove is a Henry Willis organ, one of the finest musical instruments ever exported out of Great Britain at the turn of the century. This Willis organ is 350 pipes in size and is normally played here on a Sunday. The pews are arranged in an unusual design. They face each other where you would expect them to face the front. And it's because they were used for the education of students. And the masters would sit on the right and left-hand side so they could keep an eye on the students in church. The pews are made of New Zealand kauri, one of the finest timbers in this part of the world, beautifully carved in the motif of the roses in the front, and on the ends of the pews is mother of pearl in black pith. On the right-hand side of the church, there's the designs of the islands of the diocese or the see of the Melanesian mission, but particularly the Solomon Islands. On the left-hand side here, you will see the design of the swastika. Now, the swastika is one of mankind's earliest known symbols, and it dates back to the Bronze Age time. It also refers to one of the oldest religions, or the oldest religion, known as Hinduism. And from Hinduism came Buddhism, and it's sometimes referred to as the heart of Buddha. We know the swastika for more sinister reasons, when the Third Reich reversed the swastika and turned it into exactly the opposite to what it means here. It means peace and equilibrium in a house of worship. On the ends of the master's pews, on the left and the right, you'll notice mother of pearl carved
in the nativity scene, very beautifully done. The floor of the chapel is of English marble, quarried from Torquay in the county of Devon, and brought out here at very great cost. It was significant because Devon was the birthplace of Patterson. Normally English marble is rare and black marble is rare. The font is also of English marble. On the western wall we have a rose window, and this is the works of William Morris. This window follows the motif of the War of the Roses between Yorkshire and Lancashire. We do believe that the 8 centre divisions have been devoted to the roses, and the outside 16 divisions have been devoted to a tropical flower. And we believe that the flower chosen by Morris was the Hawaiian hibiscus. Below it, we have Phillip the deacon blessing the Ethiopian eunuch. And on the left and the right, there are 2 figures which represent those that were killed in the Santa Cruz Islands and elsewhere whilst in service to the mission. Particularly, though, 2 Norfolk Islanders, Edwin Nobbs and Fisher Young, who were killed in the Santa Cruz Islands in 1864 whilst in service to the mission out of New Zealand. On the left and the right, there are 2 flags or banners which represent bishops who served here, and there were originally 5. 3 of the flags have deteriorated. On the walls there are plaques and memorials of men who served here, particularly that one of John Palmer is partly written in a language which is no longer spoken here, the language from the island of Mota. Now, with so many students coming down here, over 160 to 200 at any one time, language was a great problem. And before his death, Patterson was a linguistics person and could translate the languages. And he chose the Mota language as being the most universal of all the different dialects. There is very little convict cut stone in this house of worship, but outside on the foyer and on the steps area, you'll see some convict cut stone which has been quarried or taken from the Longridge settlement and also from the settlement at Kingston. Out on the left-hand side as we walk out, you'll see the number 5 carved in the stone nearest the garden. We do believe it is from cell block number 5 from the Pentagonal prison at Kingston. Now outside, on the eastern end, you'll see a small cemetery garden that holds memorials and crosses of staff and students who died here in the period up to 1920-21 when the college was shifted to the Solomon Islands. But the cemetery itself is down in the valley over on our left. There is a memorial there to mark the cemetery.
Also out there you'll notice a very large tree. It's of the ficus family. It's the Ficus virens or vixen fig, and we believe it originated in Sri Lanka.
As we leave the Melanesian Mission Chapel on our way to Cascade to have a look at the unloading of a cargo vessel, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Pitcairn's Island. Pitcairn Island is a small volcanic island situated in the South Pacific Ocean, 1,530 miles east-southeast of Tahiti, 3,300 miles east-northeast of Auckland, New Zealand, and 3,700 miles slightly northeast of Norfolk Island. It is of irregular shape, 2 miles long by 1 mile wide, and its area is 1,120 acres. The island was discovered by Europeans in July 1767 and named Pitcairn's Island after the young sailor on His Majesty's ship Swallow who first sighted the island. The tale of the mutiny on His Majesty's armed ship Bounty, which led to the founding of the Pitcairn community, is well known. After searching for many months, Fletcher Christian and his followers eventually was to create the first European Polynesian settlement there, arriving on the 15th of January 1790. About 47 descendants of those people still live on Pitcairn Island today. The greater majority of the descendants of the Bounty mutineers live here on Norfolk Island. The hymn you hear playing in the background is one of Norfolk Island's most famous hymns, called the Ship of Fame, believed to have been composed and compiled by George Hun Nobbs and Driver Christian. Now we've arrived here at Cascade, which originally of course was called Phillipsburg, and King decided to change the name of this area to Cascade when he noticed the great waterfalls cascading over the cliff and into the sea. He developed here in the early 1790s a wooden jetty which was 91 feet long out in the area of this present concrete jetty you see here now. There are only 2 landing places on the island that are still in use. There was a third
which was used during the days of the exportation of fruit out at Headstone. But this jetty here now has been used since 1790, when King developed this as an alternative landing spot to Kingston. Shortly we'll see the unloading of cargo, in particular one of our Hino buses, which has come from Japan via New Zealand. The cargo ship out there, the Southern Havana, has come from New Zealand. There are several buses on board, but the Hino is one of the largest cargo to be landed on Norfolk Island. And they strap the lighters together, which is the longboats, and make a platform large enough to allow the bus to come ashore. One of the most crucial aspects of the unloading of a bus like this has, of course, finished with the unloading at the ship side. Now comes another crucial part of the operation, and that, of course, is to get the bus up onto the jetty. Now, the Cato crane will be stretched to its limits. They've had to put extra strong wires on the crane with a heavier hook, and as you can see, it'll be lowered. The two lighters have been strapped together. Normally, if the sea was rougher than this, they would use 3 lighters, but in this case, with the sea being calm, and we're very fortunate for that aspect, that the bus will be lifted. As you can see, they're setting the wire strops to the hook, taking the tension. This bus was a school bus, second-hand out of Japan, came to Norfolk via New Zealand, and these Hinos carry 37 passengers in a tourist configuration, not as a school bus, and will be used by Pine Tree Tours for touring around the island. This will make the 3rd bus of this size brought to Norfolk in the last 3 years. As you can see, with this type of unloading procedure going on, we're very fortunate that the water around Cascade Jetty is extremely calm, very small swell. The tides are right, even though it is quite a low tide. And now, of course, it's been successful. It's over the jetty. All they have to do now is lower it on, and without a doubt, they have to be congratulated on this effort. Well done. It appears there is very little damage to the bus, which is most fortunate. Most of the employees that do this type of operation are young Norfolk Islanders. Their fathers have generally worked in unloading in this manner, so have their grandfathers and great-grandfathers. Some of these young fellows, of course, they have other jobs. They're employed in various positions, whether within the administration of the island or in their own professions and businesses. They knock off from those jobs, of course, and come down to work the ship, which is quite a good paying responsibility, but also, of course, it's very hazardous. But they like it, they enjoy it, and there's always a lot of young men keen to come down here and what they call working the ship, which has been, of course, a tradition of Norfolk Island in this manner since the Pitcairners came here in 1856. And it's modernized now. On Pitcairn Island, they do it a little differently.
They're actually launching, she's, as I say, made of aluminium. It weighs just over 12 metric tons, so they're very heavy, very sturdy sea boats, very ideal for our use on the island. To give you a rough idea of some of the weight, the load that they can carry, we've on some of the stages we've had up to 80 barrels full of diesel oil. We've had 80 44-gallon barrels of diesel oil inside these boats, and they still ride along very comfortably. We can actually be powering along at full steam, about 10 knots, got a straight reverse, and we can roughly stop in about the boat's length. They have to with some of the conditions we have to go through. So when the passing ships call by, we normally take aboard the ships fresh fruit and vegetables like bananas and lettuce, because of our ideal climate conditions, we grow a lot of fruit and vegetables there. So whenever any ships call by, we normally take aboard, fruit and vegetables, and also fresh fish. If we have a few in the freezers at home, we normally take out fresh fruit, vegetables, and fish to the ships.
But here on Norfolk Island, this method suits the requirements very well. There has been, of course, a lot of talk over the years on the construction of breakwaters and harbours, but unfortunately none of it has come to fruition. We will, no doubt, in the future have to look at something of a more stable situation rather than this type of operation, but it all comes down to money. I hope you have enjoyed this video showing some of the beautiful and historic places of Norfolk Island. However, there is much more to see and do. Norfolk is a complete holiday destination for all ages, offering good accommodation, hire cars, tours, dining, sports, and is renowned for its international goods imported from around the world at competitive tax-free prices. Once you have visited our island, you may, like so many others, want to keep coming back. Before we finish, I would like to introduce you to fellow Norfolk Islander Archie Bigg. Archie, what are you?
Oh, good, thanks, Lyle. What are you, brother?
Oh, I course you, thank you.
Good on.
Thank you for coming along for our this afternoon. Archie, amongst all them poem you used to write one on Norfolk Island in our Norfolk Island language. You do mind if you recite a couple of verses of our poem for Auckland?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
Thank
you
you.
like a yarret?
Oh, we want to hear it.
Well, I got one I write about Norfolk, and that's how I feel about Norfolk. And I call it the best side on earth, and translated into English means the best place on earth. Come along for me, and for all worth and worth, I'll show you the best little island on earth. Norfolk we call it, so come with me start, and see what their side kinda close in our heart. We start from town pier, side himself use a churn. Side our sullen fast land when them come from Pitcairn. Walk up on our hill and look out across town. In our late afternoon when our sun's sinking down. When our sky must as red on and them pine must a black. Hey, must be so September has them whalebirds are back. And down on our common yet our lonely cow calling her calf back in her 'cause our Norfolk night falling. First thing morning I'll show you one side, down one cliff or one ledge, side one tropic bird hide. I'll take you to walk side them pop ears a grow, side one wild hens a lay, and them cock use a crow. Come with me look, side them neo palm grow, right down in them valley side sullen nor go, and see if you'll catch sight of one red robin's breast. I'll have one grinnel, there darting about in the nest. Side them farn and the whitewood and the oak and the vine, all growing together there long for them pine. Hey, I've been plenty siding for all worth and worth. I reckon Norfolk is the best side on earth.
Oh, that's wonderful, and I sure amongst all them other poems you used to write, and Archie used to produce one book, which you'll buy, of course, and will be available all round town. And Archie, I wish you the best in your new venture.
Oh,
Thanks
you
very
bro.
much.
Thanks, mate.
Good night.
See you more.
See you more. How you doing?